there, my name is Optimus Prime, and I am joined, as always, with my illustrious co-host, Primetime Moff. Hi, Moff.
Hi.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Transformers 84 to 24, 40 years of rolling out. This week we have reached 2012, and this has led us to a conclusion. There are not enough weeks left of the year to be able to do all 12, 13 remaining years. As we've been carrying on with this over the last few months, it's great. We love doing it, but we did very much underestimate the amount of prep and time that it took as we moved on. So we've now reached the point where it feels a little bit like going to work rather than the fun thing that it was initially. So we've come up with the idea that this week we're going to do 2012. And then in subsequent weeks, we're going to be doing 3 or more years in one episode. Focus on the details a little bit less, give a bit more of an overview, and then we're going to chuck some shorts into the mix with sort of going over our favorite bots of each of those years. Isn't that right, Mr. Moff?
Yeah, so I think like when we sat down to do this, one of the big conversations was how much of the 40 years are we not aware of? And it turns out quite a lot because we, as you say, massively underestimated what was involved. And it has been a joyous experience. But I think it's right to kind of focus as we're getting to the kind of latter half of it, to really push into let's try and finish it for this year. Let's get to the end. I really look forward to sitting talking about this full year. I think this has been one of the best years of the franchise. So that this year we'll get its own episode where we'll kind of talk through it all, because there's so much to talk about. And probably the last 2, maybe 3 years will kind of split down. But there's points in this where we could probably wrap them up. So it makes sense for us to do that. We'll then focus more on the things we want to chat, and it'll be more like a chat rather than, as you say, it's like homework. It's like been like homework trying to get the prep. Lesson learned for us. This is, as we say, this is a journey, and we're bringing everybody along on the journey. We've been learning as we go on what works, what doesn't work, what we enjoy, what we don't enjoy. The first and foremost bit has to be that we enjoy it,
Yeah.
and it has felt at points that it's been more of a chore than it should be. So it's
Yeah,
back in.
yeah, no, I agree. It's want to inject a bit more fun back into it for us, which is a good thing. And if we do things like you've got the Prime Wars trilogy, we could do that as an episode rather than as 3 episodes and stuff like that. So we'll yeah, we're going to move on to that.
Yeah,
But anyway, let's
yeah.
focus back on the year in question, which is the year 2012. So let's swiftly go over the significant events and media funness of 2012. So we're between movies. There hasn't been a movie in a little while. I think it's the longest gap so far between films. We haven't had a film. Dark of the Moon was 2 whole years gone. We've got 2 whole years of gap between Dark of the Moon and and now. So let's have a quick look. Comics. You want to have a quick talk about the old comics of this year?
Yeah, yes, yeah. So the big significant point kicking off in this year is Transformers more than meets the eye. As robots in disguise as well, because it was hand in hand, and it was an incredible period to have two ongoing comics at one time. Like that is not unheard. It's not unheard of because there are points where it feels like there's been loads of comics, and it certainly has had that. But two really strong ongoing comics in their own right. But more than meets the eye, I continually tell people is probably my favourite piece of Transformers fiction. I genuinely love the work. I have read it. Back to the way I talk about things, favourites is your favourite book's the book you've read the most. The favourite film's the film you've watched the most.
Yeah.
I've read more than meets the eye more than I've read any other comic. Well, I don't know. But that and Last Stand of Records are probably joint. I couldn't count them. More than meets the eye is such that, and then obviously it's a sequel, The Lost Light, or the kind of a continuation. It's not a small undertaking, whereas like a Last Stand of Records or something that's 5, 6 episode issues. It's an easy thing to do. I've picked up and read G2 a good few times, but I genuinely, every time I've sat down to go, I'm going to do More Meets Eye again, it's just been a joy. And I reread it this summer, and I plan to reread it again in the new year because the one thing I'm looking forward to in 2025 more than anything else is that we have got the wonderful James Roberts coming to TF UK Con. I am a huge fan of James Roberts from his writing, but also from a personal standpoint from his interactions. And we'll talk more about it as we get to TF UK Con, about the conversations I've had with him in the past that make me hold him in such high esteem. But this More Than Meets the Eye just is such a pivotal point in the franchise. It really brings in, and when you reread it, you notice so many
Mm.
pieces that can just go by the radar. And what has also been enjoyable this year round was having reread it. I listened to the Triple Takeover podcast. They do episodes where they kind of focus on the issues, and there was stuff that I've not picked up on that they also bring James Roberts in to chat about, arcs and stuff, and it's just incredible. And then I've picked up his guidebooks this year, which when I reread it in the new year, I'll be having the guidebooks beside me as I read through them to kind of go, what am I missing? What is the bits is he saying or hiding away? And so, it was a pivotal point. And actually, we've got my favourite of the comics, but we also have an incredible video game this year as well.
We
Like,
do.
what a year to be catered for as fans. Like, we've got excellent video game, excellent comic, and we're going to talk about toys, but there's some stupidly good toys in this year as well.
Yeah, very
2012 is
much so.
a pretty stellar year. So I'm kind of happy when we talked about kind of shrinking the episodes down and kind of covering them. I think this is a good final kind of year to kick off to do the kind of single year because actually there's actually some really pivotal great moments in this year.
Yeah, no, definitely. As I say, more Mixed Eye and Robots in Disguise kick off. That's a really really big thing. And Fall of Cybertron. I did have a moment earlier when we were going through this that I confused Fall of Cybertron and War of Cybertron, and could not figure out if we'd already done a computer game. But it's fine. Everything's fine. Yeah, so this is the year that we get all of the Fall of Cybertron toys, which are amazing. But also the game itself, it was just so much fun having a continuation of that storyline, of
Yeah.
having a continuation of that iteration of Transformers, that design aesthetic. Okay, they changed how everybody looked so they could sell more toys. That's fine. That was going to happen. But they also added some really, really fun additional things, including the combiners, and the Dinobots, and of course Metroplex, who doesn't come this year, but we know that he is going to turn up soon. Yeah, so that's I loved playing that game with multiplayer. I loved that you could reskin some of your characters, and you could have characters like Ultra Magnus turned up, although it wasn't really in the game, but you could have him as a character in multiplayer, and all the different weapons and stuff. And just playing that online was just a really good, fun time. I was terrible, but I enjoyed it. What about you? Did you ever really delve into it too much?
Never played it online. No. At the 2012, my wife was pregnant, so we had loads of prep in the house for Jamie coming along, and then in 2013 when Jamie came along, it's like full on with kids. So I missed that aspect of it, and I
Mm.
hear people talk about it now. I'm like, oh, I wish I had. And I know that there's talks of it getting re-released in Xbox, and if it gets re-released and has multiplayer, I will make sure I put some time
Mm.
into that because I hear people talk like you about how good it was and all these extra things you could do. And I'm like, oh, wish I'd done that. But for the longest time, I just didn't do multiplayer or didn't do online because I'm like, I've got such even now I feel that way to be fair that like I have such limited time playing my video games that I
Mm.
kind of I enjoy a story mode more than I enjoy an online multiplayer. So I've kind of always focused on that. But I think this is one I would break the mold for and kind of give that wee multiplayer a bit of a time because actually I think our community, the people we're friends with, how many of them would be on that? Like it
Yeah.
would
Oh,
just
yeah,
be
definitely.
let's get as many as it would be great fun.
Yeah, when I first started getting
I mean,
more into the sort of the community side, me and a couple of the other guys that I'm friendly with, we went back and started playing it on Xbox for a little while, which was quite fun.
I after and I know you were saying, could you remember thought about this? I kind of did, and then when we're chatting there, I'm like, of course I remember thought about it. I literally went back into the house and I was like, I said to Jamie, my eldest, who's played through both of them, it's like,
Mm.
I want to go play that again. I got like 2 minutes of playing it, and then Sean, my youngest, just took the controller off me, and he started playing through it, and I'm like, so proud of playing through Transformers games. No, no, it's good, and it's good to kind of see that he doesn't have that aspect of enjoying the toys. Doesn't we're going to TFA and Minicon Reading, and I was like, "You want a Transformer back? Nah, I'm okay." And he did he DNA test here? Do you know what's going on? But actually, that he connects with the media more. Like he loved the movie this year, but he's really enjoying the game, and he doesn't really play kind of games like that. But he's like, "This is great fun."
Nice. You should be very proud. So other than that, we had season two of Transformers Prime, which is that's the see. Oh, I can't actually remember what happened in season two.
Do you know what I should do? I should bring Jamie in
Yeah,
because I think he told you this last weekend when we were at Minicon. So we obviously drove down to Jamie and I drove down. We stayed somewhere on a Thursday night, Lincoln somewhere, somewhere that Andy from the show had picked, and then we went to Kapow Toys, and then went to the convention, and then we came back to the convention. Jamie spent most of that trip watching Transformers Prime, and he rattled through almost all season one. Well, he finished season one, and he was nearly finished season two, which he kept trying to tell me about as we're driving. I'm like, no, because I want to watch it now. I can't watch it while we're driving. But it was such a joyous experience, and I'd said to him, I watched the first 5 episodes, and I said, "Look, you watch the first 5 episodes, and we'll have something to chat about in the car." We never got to chat about it because he couldn't put it off. He's like, "This is great." It was such a joy, and I genuinely hadn't had him sit and watch. He'd seen clips of it, but he'd never ever watched a full any like kind of real full episodes or full series, and he was like, I'm hooked." So he has a Christmas list, and he has put Transformers Prime toys on it, which I'm just like so proud.
Nice.
So
Yeah, I was trying to remember what happened in season two, but it was season one and ended with Prime losing his memory and becoming Orion Pax again, and that sort of started it off. Him working with Megatron, which was an interesting way of going about things. And because you had like one overarching storyline in the first season, and in the second season, and in the third season, it was Beast Hunters, and that was a big overarching
yeah,
storyline. The second season was more like episode to episode. It had a few big sort of storyline beats, but nothing that massively sticks in my head. I was thinking it was the season that Smokescreen turned up, but that's season three. So the whole hunting for the artifacts and all that, that's all season three. So yeah, there we go. I think it doesn't help really that the toys for Prime were season one toys,
yeah,
which is also yeah, befuddling my memory of the situation.
true. Like, and I think that's the aspect. It's like it's so surreal because they've obviously got the toys for the video game out in the right year at this point, but the toys for the show were like that wee bit behind,
Yeah,
which is a bit frustrating. But I think it's still. I think the toys are so good that they actually don't, and the show's so good that you're just so glad to have got them at that point.
yeah,
I know we're going to talk about the toys, but there's some absolute stellar. We talked about the first edition toys having great toys. There's some even, not, I would say better, but there's some really strong toys in this Prime line. Like I remember really being excited to pick some of them up and just being dead impressed with some of the engineering. I think the engineering in them stands up. 12 years later, still stands up. I think that's impressive.
yeah. Yeah, there are some really, really fantastic toys, and I'm just having a quick look over the episodes of season two and realizing it was the season where they're going after the artifacts. So I should just stop talking about
No.
it.
No, I'm
But
desperate.
yeah,
I actually said to Jamie that I'm during the Christmas break when I've got 2 weeks off. We're going away for me and him are going away for like 2 days, doing a toy trip, and I'm like, I'm going to watch Prime when we're away. Like that's what I'm going to do to catch up with it because I'm just like, this is so cool.
I th yeah, as I said with Prime, I haven't watched it in a little while, quite a few years actually, probably. But it's all just sort of blurred into one because I just watched it all back to back more recently. So yeah. Anyway, that's fine. We're all fine. That's good. Shall we move on to toys? Because then I'm
Yes,
less
I'm right
likely to
into it.
waffle wrongly.
No,
So we are going through the different lines. So there were a fair few lines this year, but not as many as we've had in previous years. The main core line this year was Transformers Prime, which we'll discuss in a minute. There was also a fair bunch of stuff in Generations, including the full for Cybertron stuff. Um, Weirdly, there are still crossovers going. We've got some Star Wars crossovers and some Marvel crossovers, but we're down to only three figures per line, and they appear to all be repaints. So hopefully, we will never have to talk about those again.
except
There's
from there's one coming, like the
yeah,
Mandalorian one.
that's different. Those crossovers, that's a yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Third party stuff we had a look, and most significantly was something that didn't come out. Um,
Yeah. No, as I said to you, that the fans project were the big company at this point, and I was having a chat on RFR's show last night about the rise of third party being about the toys that nobody that Hasbro weren't giving us, and this year had the fans project Deluxe Insecticons, which again, annoyingly, as most blooming things with the Deluxe Insecticons, it was 3 out of 4.
mhm.
But to think that since the original Deluxe Insecticons up until, in the last 12 months, so that was only really this proper kind of almost complete set of them we've had. There's not been another third party set, it is interesting to kind of have a look back at them, and they're, I talked about in the last episode how good the original molds were. So you see them in the Deluxe Insecticon colours rather than being ninjas that were kind of more like heavy artillery bots that were kind of fun. But yeah, third party wasn't anything exciting. The 2013 episode kicks into fans toys kicking off, and I think that'll be a really interesting one to kick off because fans toys are huge. But it wasn't really anything massively exciting in the releases in 2012, or you know, or from what we can see documented, because I know there's more than what was documented. I'm confident of it, but
Yeah, yeah,
not that many.
yeah. So other than that, Cyberverse sort of became its own thing. It was an imprint of well, it's Transformers Prime primarily figures. It's started off with the Dark of the Moon stuff, but moved into Transformers Prime. This is their whole sort of Legends sort of scale series. So you had the small mainline bots, and then you had the Commander class. And this year they introduced vehicles and other sets that were actually pretty cool. But we'll go on to those a bit in a moment. There was a little bit of Dark of the Moon left, but I can't remember which figures they were, so I'm not even going to mention that, apart from what I just did. The same with Rescue Bots. Some stuff happened. Creo, the only thing I'll mention about Creo is it was the year that they started the blind bag figures that had the two mode little dudes, and they were awesome fun to collect. And quite a few shops had them around. My local Morrison's
Mhm.
had them. I used to grab them all the time. They were super fun, and I don't know where most of mine are. I think I gave them away. Always the way.
I've got a box of all my Creo stuff, and again, they're good fun toys.
Yeah, no, they are fun. And then two other things to talk about. Bot shots appeared this year. Bot shots, if you're unfamiliar with this absolutely fantastic, fun little line, they combined elements of Battle Beasts and Hot Wheels in that they were little toy cars that would zoom around, pull back and go. So lots of nostalgia fun there. When they hit something, they'd spring up into their robot mode in the loosest possible sense. They're a little bit like jump starters, but they had a little flippy round thing on their chest that you were supposed to play some kind of game with. I never
Kind of
looked
rock, paper,
into.
scissors.
It was basically rock paper scissors. So very much like Battle Beasts. But yeah, they're great fun. They had loads of characters, a few obscure characters turned up in the ranges. Um, there were several Optimus Primes, so I have a few of them, including a really nice transparent blue one for some reason. But there was like 30 of them came out in the first year, including sets with launchers and sort of packs with multiple figures. Excuse me. Yeah, they're great. I really really enjoyed them as a thing to pick up and go through the racks and find little figures, and they're just really derpy, sort of chibi kind of vehicle modes. Love them. Um, but the other thing that came out this year was there was a few more Masterpiece figures came out. We're in now the second phase of Masterpiece after MP10 came along, and that's when things really start to pick up and get interesting. Um, so I think what we'll do is, whilst we're talking about Masterpiece, let's move on to our top five picks.
Before we do that,
Yes, sorry.
an important moment happened in this year, and I've shared this moment before, but this was the year, and it's not a toy that comes out this year, but it was October 2012 that the Encore Fortress Maximus was announced, and I've shared my story. Like it is my favorite bot ever, just
Mhm.
because I never, ever, ever, ever thought it was a possible toy I would own. And I talked about it so much. I remember when we had been at Auto Assembly in 2012 was the first time I saw one out of a box. I saw a boxed one previously, but it was the first time I saw an out of box one in person and was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And I remember showing it to the wife, and she was like, you can't buy that. I genuinely was tempted at that point. We had a share thing come out from our old work the Friday of auto assembly, so I had some money in my pocket, which was a dangerous thing going to my first auto assembly. So this is the year of my first auto assembly. So it was the first time I saw it in person, and she knew how much that blew me away. And when they announced it, I was so excited, but also going, you know, point this comes out, we're going to be Kerry's going to be off on maternity leave. We were absolutely making the decision to cut back on things, to try and allow it to be off as long as possible. So I was like, oh, that's amazing. But hopefully it'll be available now, like a year after it comes out when you go back to work. And she said to me, you need to own this. Like this is your favorite toy. It's the one you've always wanted. You need to own it. Order it. And that's a shoot. It's not a cheap toy. Like it's not a £20 toy. It was a chunk of money, and it was getting imported. So I knew it was also going to cost a lot of import charge and stuff. So I always talk about that moment being that the toy is meaningful to me anyway because it's Fortress Maximus. I still have that wonder looking at it, but the story behind it, the
Mm.
powerfulness of it, and when we talk about 2013, I'll bring the pictures up of getting it for the first time and holding it beside my child and deciding which one I love more. And we don't answer that question. But I thought it was important to kind of talk about that as a that that happened in 2012. That happened it was the beginning of October 2012. They announced it, and it just was if you ever have those doubts about your partner, and there was points we've talked about it in previous years where I wasn't collecting because my partner was at that time was very much like, no, like, this is a kid's hobby. Like you should be grown up. You should do grown up things. Thankfully, I ditched her. My wonderful wife very much encouraged me to be myself, and like that's why we went to auto assembly because she told me, "Let's go to this. Let's make an effort to go to it." So, it's a great year for me in terms of got to go to my first convention, and then at that point having the excitement. And it's March 2013. Googled it just to check. It's March 2013. The toy comes out, but I remember just continually being, I'm going to get one of these. I'm going to get one of these for months. And it was exciting because I was going to become a dad as well. But excitement more than Fortress Max was kind of up there. But yeah. So I thought before we go into that, because
No,
when we go into these toys, we're going to talk about one of my other absolute top 10 toys. So I thought it was kind of important to kind of highlight the announcement of the number one toy in there as well.
well, I'll go first only because mine's quicker and less significant, but also significant. So as I was saying, the Masterpiece line has morphed from the sort of just really cool big scale toys of no real sort of plan behind it to the second phase, which from MP10 onwards were scaled, although that was still a very loose term. But we did start to get properly for the first time other things other than jets and Megatrons and Optimuses repainted as nauseum. So now we move into the Autobot cars, and the first one released was MP12 Lambor, or
Oh,
Sideswipe, as we more
beautiful.
commonly refer to him as. Um, and yeah, he was just so nice. It was like um all the stuff that was promised to us with Binaltech and alternators, those lovely, lovely
Yeah,
car modes, but now they had a robot mode that looked like how we think the characters should look like.
yeah,
And the great thing about Lambo or Sideswipe that figure has been around for what 12 years and hasn't been redone. A lot of the other ones have had like massive
yeah,
tweaks to it. His new version that he got, the repaint, the animated style repaint, they gave him sort of blue windows, and that was about it.
yeah,
It's just such a solid, nicely done, really, really good toy. Yes, it's had about 412 repaints since it came out. But yeah, I can't remember exactly when I first got hold of one. But yeah, it was always one of my favorite masterpieces. Such a nice toy. And then there was another MP, wasn't there, Moff?
yeah. So Sideswipe is outstanding to be fair, and they weren't that expensive. They also then get knocked off, but I got the first version of it,
Mm.
the proper release of it, and it wasn't expensive. Like
No,
that's
no.
the aspect that they were not incredibly expensive. They were a great upgrade to what we'd had before. Like we've had so many good generations versions of these characters now that the Masterpiece don't seem that necessity. But at that
Mm.
point, that's the arguably still the best version of Sideswipe, but it certainly had that. So then we go on to in my opinion, and I'm going to be biased, the best Masterpiece toy that's been released, and genuinely, I think maybe my favourite version of this character, and it is MP13 Soundwave. I am a huge Soundwave fan. For anybody that knows me, 13 is also my lucky number. Like, there's so many parts of my life of just coincidentally became 13, like getting married in the 13th, and my boy being born 2013, like our first house, number 13. So many bits, so many different things. My favourite character getting a masterpiece being 13. Again, it was a similar bit of this just feels a bit crazy, but it's such a good toy. It's 12 years later, and I still can pick it up, transform it. That's the joy of that, and Lambor's pretty much in there as well.
Mm.
They're not difficult transformations. You can do them without a video or without instructions. Yeah, okay, you need to kind of think about it. It's not just a pick up and transform within seconds, but it's not like an MP44 or an
No.
MP36. It's an enjoyable transformation. Looks good in both modes. I remember having it, and I've got two copies of it because I've got the US and Japanese version. And I remember having one on my desk at work, and somebody said, "Why you get a tape player?" It's like, ha 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 ha. But the cleverness of it that it could take tapes that the same tape G1 tapes, but yet the new versions like that Laserbeak. That Laserbeak's probably my first fiddle toy because that Laserbeak sat in my desk at work, and I would just sit and transform it without even thinking about it. You know the head having the camera on it for the like first episode. It just the toy blew me away when I got it in hand, and I was just like, this thing is absolutely wonderful. So MP Soundwave is my top toy of the year, my number one in the top five, and genuinely, I don't. Other than I can say, always say Fort Max is my number one toy because of all the everything about it.
Yeah.
My then other nine to get my top 10 kind of change in order depending on how I'm feeling, but MP Soundwave would be in that top bracket, top five bracket. If you were to pick toys that you had to save, I would always want to keep MP Soundwave. And I've
Yeah.
had Acoustic Wave, I've had other versions. I think the new Legacy versions are really nice Soundwave, but MP13 is just something special.
Yeah, it was. I didn't get it till it came out, the American release. But it's just such a lovely, lovely toy. Because the original, the Japanese one only came with sound with Laserbeak, didn't it? Yeah, because the American one had all four of the main ones. No, five. It had Buzzsaw as well, didn't it? Yeah, so it had five of the main cassettes. It didn't have Rat Bat, and Rat Bat you could only get in Sound Blaster, which I never bothered to do. But the yeah, it's such a joy to transform. It looks so amazing in both modes. Yes, it's a little bit thick compared to the original one, but because there's more stuff that needs to come into it. But that's a tiny niggle. The cassettes come with the cassette boxes, which is a really nice little touch. And you got the
As
Energon cube thing that sticks onto his chest as well, and all of his little accoutrement. The hand thing, the double. I can't remember what it actually does
yeah,
in the show. But anyway,
the
all
the
of those.
fact Laserbeak could sit on
Yeah,
his wrist as well. Just so many aspects of that toy are just so clever, and it's we talked about it with my with MP1 that it's a great toy, but it's got loads of wee cool features on it.
yeah,
Soundwave has that, and I don't know if all the Masterpiece really have that bit of it. Soundwave might be one of the last ones that has all those kind of cool wee gimmicks because like Grimlock had that, we'd be able to change the eyes, do so.
yeah,
There's so many that they're kind of earlier masterpieces, and this one for that aspect kind of almost feels more like the original ones than this kind of newer wave.
yeah.
Um, but just a great toy, great toy.
Yeah, I do feel this era of Masterpiece, they wiggle a little bit in terms of what they're actually doing with it. Because at the moment they're still toy based more than toon based, but there's lots of toon aspects in them. Um, but I think with the cheaper price point for the cars and stuff like that, because they were about 60 quid, if I
Yeah.
remember rightly, give or take, which isn't a massive amount of money considering if they released a sideswipe now, it's going to be 120 quid, isn't it? At
It's,
least.
it's
I can't remember how much Trailbreaker was. Who's the most
it's
recent
about
one?
that. Yeah, it's about
Yeah,
that.
so there you go. And the amount of stuff he came with, yeah, he had power drivers that could clip onto his hands, but that was about it. He didn't even have a jetpack, um,
No.
which obviously would have been a thing these days. But anyway, let's move on from these wonderful, wonderful toys onto the next thing. So it's me. Generations this year. They had lots of nice things. They had a few bots from different waves, but from different sort of eras and GDA, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the main crux of it was Fall of Cybertron, and I specifically remember seeing a preview of before the game came out, a preview of the figure of Bruticus. So all the five bots that became Bruticus, and thinking, oh, that's amazing. I really, really want to get that. It was the first time you had deluxe scale figures all combining to make one combiner, because previously it'd been like one sort of deluxe or Voyager, and then the others were smaller. So yeah, I I remember distinctly going around Toys R Us, and they had all the ways out, and I managed to grab all five of the bots, and my wonderful wife bought them all for me for Christmas for that year, and I was so happy. They were so nice. I was so pleased, and it's only really when you allow yourself to look at something and realize quite how much of a piece of crap it was. I mean, the thing was
Yes.
practically two-dimensional. Um, Onslaught was like hollow, nothing, and just flat. Um, and the limbs, they're just a mess. The hands were horrible. It barely stood up. But I was so happy when I got it. Now it's gone, long gone. I think I sold it for like a tenner because nobody wanted it
There
when
was
I
so
got rid of
much
it.
desire for that thing at the time, but like I don't know if that's the first time, but it definitely was one of the ones that really sticks in my memory of people being desperate to try and get
Yeah,
that. I never ever got it all. I saw it the first time I saw it. I was like, I'm kind of glad I've not got this because I'm not desperate for it. I was being very, as I talked about, like this year, I've been very choosy what I was picking up, and it was
yeah,
like that's a lot of money to drop just to get Bruticus. Like I'll
yeah.
hold off. I'll hope I get it in secondary mark or something because it became so popular and ever. And there's still, there was what third party upgrade kits to make it better.
Oh,
But
definitely.
I think by the time that came out, I'd kind of lost the desire for it. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm all right not having this.
Yeah, again, it is what it is. It was good. It was good that it what it proved to Hasbro is that people were gonna bother to pick up all the parts of a combiner.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't the figure that was always shelf warming. Even with the absolutely bonkers color scheme that it came in for some reason, which was nothing like how it came in in the game either. The game had more sort of G1-esque and in the game terms sort of muted colors, but this was bright blues and oranges, and then they did the G2 box set of it, and then there was also the box set of it in
Breakers.
the other.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
there's the Wreckers as well, which is the following year, I think. But yeah, anyway, it's definitely it will not end up on any of my top 10 lists of all time, but on this particular year, because of the circumstances, it was
Yeah.
definitely a top five.
And I think there is an aspect of the excitement of being able to get them all. And we've talked about this before, the being able to walk into a store and pick things up.
Yeah,
Your experience of buying them, like I've just told that story about with the
yeah,
Encore Fort Max. Your experience of the purchasing them, or being able to collect them, or bring them, adds something to the figure. The figure might not be as good as you think it's going to be, but actually the story behind it, all the emotion behind it, can change it. So I think it's a good pick for you for this year.
yeah. Yours.
So my next one in the full Cybertron range is it's the Soundwave, and again, it's not the best toy. Like it's too big, it's too chunky compared to the War for Cybertron Soundwave, which I think's a better version of the toy.
Mm.
But the cool gimmick that this had, and I'm a fan of gimmicks. I do like a kind of clever gimmick was that the tapes were in the kind of cylinder style. They popped out, hit the ground, and transformed themselves. Such a fun gimmick. They weren't the best looking. They certainly don't fall into the same category as Soundwave, MP Soundwave, but fun, clever kind of gimmick. And then the same gimmick was in the blaster as well. So, no, it's still a really good, strong toy. And yes, I've got it, and yes, I've got the tapes because I'm that kind of guy. But again, I think it falls back to the at the time I thought it was really clever. And I was like, this is really good. There has been better gimmicks since, but that was a good one.
Yeah,
What about
it
you?
was.
What's your next one then? Have you got any other
Well, I was
ones
just
from
going
Fall
to quick
Cybertron you
thing.
want to talk about? Yeah.
No, no, I just got a quick information about Soundwave. I did love getting hold of all the tapes for him and Blaster as well. And yeah, they were so wonderfully dumb. I loved it. The modes on them were just so doofy, and obviously were all very much kibbly nonsense because of the transformation. But the
Yeah.
plane, the bird ones were the standouts, I think. The robot mode ones were a bit naff, but they were just so much fun. But anyway, yeah, that's it with me for Fall of Cybertron. Moving on to some Prime related stuff now, and I'm gonna delve into a little bit of a subline with the Cyberverse stuff and talk about some of the vehicles that came out. Most of the vehicles and playsets and the other weirdness that they released in this line, I wasn't a massive fan of, but the Energon Driller, which was the thing that all the Viacon Steves were going around drilling out the Energon in the mines, and the toy version of it was never going to have a toy version in standard line, but Cyberverse gave you the opportunity to have these things. And it's a really cool gimmick that had the you had this little light pipe thing that you could stick onto the weapons and made them all glow because all the figures came with like transparent weaponry. It was just cool, and it all moved, and you could press buttons and it would drill around, and it lit up, and you could put loads of Steves on it, and it was great. And the other ones that came out I hated, but this one, well, you had the Apex armor for Bumblebee that didn't look anything like the Apex armor in the show and was awful. You had Wheeljack's ship, which wasn't a particularly impressive design in the first place, and then you had that truly horrendous Maximus Prime that was like some kind
Oh
of
yeah.
Power Ranger nonsense
Yeah.
big thing where you could put other bots in it. I only picked up one of those reasonably recently, very cheap, because I hate it so much. But it's an Optimus, so I had to have it. Yeah, so the vehicles in the Cyberverse line, the Driller specifically, and it came with Knockout, who is obviously one of the standout characters from Transformers Prime. Yours.
Mine was a difficult one because I've picked a mold and I then went for a funky version of the mold rather than actually. I probably think the original is my favourite, but I thought it would be an interesting one to talk about, and it is the. And again, we've talked about this before. If you want, the Transformers Prime subline is called Robots in Disguise, just because let's have multiple versions of Robots in Disguise just to confuse you, because you know we're going to go to a future cartoon that has it again, but it is the Wheeljack mold, but specifically in the Dead End colours. I think the Wheeljack toy in itself is one of the best toys. Again, like you think of this year, there's so many really, really, really good toys that hold up so well. That Wheeljack is one of them, and the Dead End and the colours are just freaking great. Like really, really, really do like them. Like both the Wheeljack and the Dead End are still on my shelves. They've always been on my shelves since I got them because they just stand out, looking so good. The Dead End's colours are just stonking. A great head on it. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think what the Prime line did really, really well was the really nice, accurate versions of the characters that
Yeah.
looked great in both modes. They're really solid toys and they're really fun to transform and fiddle with. They're not overly complicated transformations, but they were great. And it's just occurred to me that I really should have put a Veercon on my list because the Veercon figure I absolutely loved. I think at my
Agree. No,
peak,
agree.
I had about 15 of them because I decided to army
Wow.
build them. I only had about eight open, but when they all went on sale really cheap in like the Entertainer, I was just buying up Vehicons. I had a crate that used to sit behind me where I am now, full of boxed Prime toys that I
Brilliant.
bought cheap. Um, but yeah, they're just so good, and because it was quite a limited number of characters, it meant that they could have a little bit of license to bring out some fun new characters as repaints of the others, and indeed completely new molds, which I'm sure you'll talk about in a minute. But I'm going to carry on with the Robots in Disguise Prime theme, and I'm going to go for Starscream Voyager mode, Voyager
Oh,
class. So
brilliant.
this wave had a thing I didn't like. I did not like the weapon gimmick. I didn't like the weapon gimmick, not because it wasn't quite cool. You know, you had the weapons sort of folded up into a shape, for lack of any kind of description, and you'd press a button on them, and then the weapon would become more of a weapon, and it would light up. That was fab. The only problem was that you could only actually ever have the weapon in weapon mode if you pressed the button down and the whole weapon would deploy. But it's only when the button was held down. There was no locking mechanism. The only exception to that being Ultra Magnus, who had that giant cannon that turned into his hammer, and that locked. That was the only one. The rest of them were all just annoying. Anyway, forget the weapon. The rest of the figure was absolutely stonking. The first edition one is better in my opinion, but just a bit more detailed and a little bit more fun. But this scaled up version, it's lanky, it's got really great sculpting. It's just a really lovely figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of really good ones. I think this is one of the hardest
I,
top fives, if I'm honest. Like I could pick five just from the Prime, throwing
yeah.
in things like Knockout and the Bumblebee. I would put a Bumblebee toy in my tops of this, like which is crazy because Bumblebee's awful. But then there's also the Hotshot repaint, and there's the really cool Dark Energon repaints. Just so many really, really good toys. I am going to go with going down the Soundwave theme because I've done two Soundwaves. Uh, the Prime Rumble, which was blue, so the Rumble was blue.
hmm
We're okay with
Yep.
that.
Yep.
I love the toy. I think the toy is absolutely fantastic. Two big guns that can be used as pile drivers. I then bought a second one and made a frenzy, and I still look at the two of them on my shelf and think they are great toys. Really, really well done. Really nice mode, really nice robot mode. And there's loads of wee nods to the G1, which I think is really clever because it's like my boy could pick it up and not notice that it doesn't matter to him. But I pick it up and go, oh, it's a really nice toy. But look at how clever that is that they've designed stuff to kind of throw you back. So again, another absolute stonker. But I could easily pick, I could easily pick three or four from just the Prime, forgetting about all the other stuff that we've not talked about convention exclusives this year. When there's four or five of them that are really good, like it is just what a brilliant year for toys, and it makes me feel a wee bit like I didn't get a lot of them, as I said, budget wise, but there's so many that, that I would easily, if it was this year, they were coming out this year, I'd pick them up this year because they are so nice. So, so nice.
Yeah, I'm looking back over it. I'm like, oh, I should have picked different ones. There's some that I'd really like. It's like things like Sergeant Cup. I mean, Cup wasn't in the
Oh,
show, and the Cup figure is taken off of the designs they did for Ironhide for the show that were not used. And he's this wonderful, wonderful mix of the Prime aesthetic. G1 kind of styling for the Ironhide version anyway. So the Ironhide head and the red truck. But then he had the weapons of Bayverse Prime. I don't quite understand why they decided to make that figure as Cup in the American line. There is an Ironhide version of him in the Arms Micron, the
yep,
Japanese
yep.
series, but yeah, it's just there's just so many wonderful, wonderful toys. I
I
just
know, like honestly, like as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, going, I know my fifth one is, but I'm thinking, going, how have I not got like the Hiss Tank Shockwave San Diego Comic
yeah,
Con exclusive, or the over Run Amok and Runabout, which weren't called Runabout, it's called Overrun. The TF Club exclusive, and there was a San Diego. No, it was a oh no, both TF Club exclusives. They were gorgeous because they came with a kind of beautiful artwork on them as well. There's a Drift. I'm looking at the kind of list now, and I'm just going, it's just actually genuinely you could do a top 10, and I still think you'd miss stuff out because there's
oh
just
yeah,
so many well delivered toys in this line in this year, which the Prime one is. I think RID, when we get to the RID 2015, I think RID falls in that category as well. There's so many toys in there that if you didn't collect it, you wouldn't know that you go back just now and play with. You'll be like, these are dead clever. And
mm,
the RID, the Prime line, sorry, that like so many of them in there, so many of them that are just so clever put together.
yeah.
Is whose turn is it to go for the
I
last one? Is
think
it me?
it's yeah, you done Rumble, sir. It's me. This is actually really quick, really simple because I've already gone over him a couple of times. But it's the Optimus Prime MP10 anniversary Toys R Us exclusive figure. It's the American release of MP10. It was the first time I had him. I got him for that Christmas. I forced my mum to buy him for me for Christmas, due to her never buying me Optimus Prime when I was a kid. Um, and that was fine. And yeah, I've gone over MP10 last week. It's MP10. It's lovely.
MP10
And
is just
yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah. Um, there we go. I'll leave that because that's doesn't really need anything else said. And what was your last pick?
So mine's I wanted to pick one of the GDO toys. I thought so. We had the conversation about what it stood for. So GDO stands for Global Development Organization. Why? I don't know. It doesn't really explain why. It was a Western online retailers referred to the toys under the mysterious term GDO, which later revealed to be abbreviation for Global Development Organization. It didn't really explain what they were. They were released in China, Singapore, and Philippines first, and then they got a Toys R Us release later on. There were some really cool ones in there. You had really clever ones like Springer. There was a Swerve. There was multiple different ones. There's a really nice G2 Megatron from the Hunt for Decepticons Bludgeon mold. So really, really nice ones. I went with Wheelie. Now, hear me out. Nobody really picks Wheelie toys for anything. However, firstly, it's of one of the best molds that we've ever had in the reveal of the Shield Jazz. But it also had a really fun bit that it came with his catapult, and it just it was the first time I had a wheelie toy that I was like, this is really fun. Like this is just it's got a nice wee bit of posability. It's got a bit of character about them. They all the kind of swerve, the Springer. They don't all look like proper, like good finished toys, except from I think the wheelies are the best of them. But again, it takes me back to a point in collecting where it was a mad pat. It was like when they dropped, it was like, oh my goodness, this weird release. Everything needs to get them. And I managed to pick up the ones I really wanted and got them, and I was so excited. And I've only just recently sold the wheelie. I kept the Springer because he's Springer, but I sold the wheelie. And there's a wee bit of me that's like, I wish I hadn't sold that because I could have. It'd just be nice to still own it. But that's my final pick for this year.
Yeah, the DDO stuff was it was a bit weird in the way it sort of came out. It was all repaints. It was all a bunch of sort of missing generations characters. And again, some weird scaling. So like Wheelie being deluxe class rather than teeny tiny. But again,
Whereas
that's
it did
me.
Motor Mouth or Motor
Motor
Master, sorry,
breath.
Motor Breath in
Yeah,
his Legends class. It's just like
yeah.
let's find a mold that fits a character rather than as you say, can I go in for scale? But when's scale really been a challenge in our
Exactly,
hobby?
exactly. And then there's some of the other ones are a bit bonkers. But the Megatron, the tank Megatron in the G2 colors is a lovely toy. It was off of the what's his face?
Hunt for Decepticon Bludgeon.
That's the one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, off of that mold. Just such a absolutely lovely, bonkers, stupid figure. And such bright green. And they did Hotspot off of the
Oh
Scrapple and
yeah.
Inferno mold as well.
Oh, that hotspot is was gorgeous. The blue on it was
Mm,
so nice in hand. I gave that to my friend. Hotspot was his favorite toy growing up. So when I got it and I really liked it, I was like, I like this, but I know he'll really appreciate it. And he still has it. This is my tattooist, and he still got it in the shelves in the tattoo shop, and it always makes me smile because
nice.
it's such a pretty blue. Like same as the Megatrons are such a pretty green. Like it
Yeah.
really just pops. It's one of these ones that when you see it at conventions still now, it's like, oh, that's really nice. That's got a really nice colour to it.
Yeah, I think the only one of those I've still probably got knocking around is the Legends Class Blue Streak. That's just a really nice version of that. That was the Jazz mold, wasn't it? But yeah. Anyway, that has brought us to the end of our 2012 toys. Yes, there are many others that we could have spoken about and we could have spent longer on it. But as you know, if you've watched our show in the past, that could end up taking us down a rabbit hole, and we spent far long enough as it stands. Um, so yeah, next week we're gonna mush a load of years together and try and do this in a sensible and more thought out and swifter swifter way. But yeah, anything else you want to add, Mr. Moff?
So 2012 was such a momentous year for me, from a personal standpoint of going to my first Transformers convention. Um, MP Soundwave comes out, one of my absolute top tier toys of all time. You know, that Dead End Wheeljack mold probably fits in that kind of block as well. So you've got some of the best toys. You've got my favorite piece of Transformers media. You have got some of my favorite memories in terms of the going to first Transformers convention, winning an Optimus Prime signature that you now have on from that convention. Like there was just so many incredible moments in this year. So 2012 is always going to be a special year for me in terms of, and it was when my wife in the last few months of her pregnancy, her pelvis went. So from October through to kind of December, she was bedridden. So we watched Transformers Prime, and she got into actual Transformers with me. So it was the first proper cartoon that she enjoyed as well. So this year has very many special memories, and I know we're going to have more as we go on. But that aspect, my favourite Transformer memory will always be the point where the wife told me I had to get a Fortress Maximus, and knowing that I was going to actually own that toy. And the moment it comes in, we'll talk about in 2013 episode, but that that suddenly going becoming a reality. And I think this, when we go back and talk about 2024, there's so many moments like that, feel like that in this year of oh my goodness moments. So not a great year. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I've enjoyed going back through so many good toys, so many good toys. And actually, desperate now to kind of go away and chat to my son about the kind of Prime toys that I think I should go and try and pick him some up for this Christmas now that he's enjoyed Transformers Prime. More so because I want to play with him again.
Yeah, yeah, no, every time we have these discussions, on, oh, I just want to get one of those or one of these or one of whatever. I'm gonna have to make a list and pick some bots I really want to get hold of, um, and to try and be good and stick to just a few things rather than trying to get every single bot that I would have got. But I try and focus down my collection to be one thing, but it's so difficult. There's so many lovely, lovely things out there. I'd love to get some more Prime figures, and I probably will, and probably some animated. And anyway, right. Shall we leave it there?
Yes.
Excellent. Right. So we'll be back next week, probably, with another episode in some shape or form. We'll have shorts all over the week. I'm currently loading up a unboxing of blockies, which has been quite fun to do. They're going up onto our channel and also onto my TikTok, which is a thing
Fine.
apparently. And yeah, Moff's been doing all of his wonderful things, and his Black Friday sale was amazing, I'm sure. And yes, also don't forget, we still have only a few of the 40th anniversary Lucan's Tees t-shirts, and we're running out of 40th anniversary, so be quick, or there'll be no anniversary and no t-shirts left. And they are fantastic t-shirts, and you can probably change it to a different year, put a one and Sharpie next to it if you wanted to. Or if you're about to turn 40 or somebody you know is about to turn 40, that would also be a good thing. You could get a whole bunch of them for a 40th birthday party. Just saying, matching t-shirts. Anyway, right, that is the end of this episode. Thank you very much for watching and putting up with our random waffle. We will see you again next week. Bye, Mr. Moff.
Bye.
Bye.